Okay. In theory, we are going. There we go. Oh, I don't. Well, I do need a website, but. All right. I hope everybody's doing well today. I hope everybody is on time today. I apologize for the whole thing with the daylight savings. I'm going to turn on my face here. There we go. I don't know. I don't believe everywhere in the world does daylight savings. I know that there is daylight savings to some degree in Europe, from what I understand. I know ours is different. We used to be the same, you know. Europe and the U.S. used to have the same daylight savings, and then one of the presidents, about 2 or 3 presidents back, decided we were going to change it for reasons. I'm not sure why. So this is the one where we get an hour less sleep. So it's spring forward. So at 2 o'clock a.m. it becomes 3 o'clock a.m. and you miss an hour of sleep. Whereas in the fall, it goes the other way, and then you get an hour of sleep extra, because at 2 o'clock it becomes 1 o'clock a.m. or what, I don't know. I'm no time scientist. I hope you're all doing well. It's cold but clear here in the middle part of Wisconsin. Let's see here. Dorn Jr. says, I hate YouTube as YouTube hates our hobby. I also hate time change for those of you in the U.S. I love Uncle Adam and coffee enough to get over the first 2. Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to move my microphone just a touch closer. Sorry. So, yeah, I'm glad to see it. Let's see here. What do we got here? Hello from Illinois. Florida. Joshua says that he remembered the clocks. That's important. Yeah, we made sure of that because I was absolutely sure I was going to screw up and not have the time right. So we made sure last night before we went to bed to change the clocks and stuff like that. You know, like your cell phone and all that kind of stuff these days. Like my computer updated itself, cell phone, you know, that kind of junk, the DVR on the TV or whatever. But it's all the other clocks in the house that you have to do yourself manually or whatever. So yes. Hello from Texas. Good afternoon from Norfolk. Sat painting Napoleonic British light dragoon horses. So that sounds interesting. I'm just going to scooch myself over here a little bit. There we go. Horses. I don't know that I've ever... Well, I was going to say I've never painted horses necessarily, but I did paint Varengard for the Age of Sigmar, and they're technically on horses, although they're evil, like, chaos devil horses, so it's probably not quite the same thing. Let me see here. Saskatchewan never changes their clocks. Back in my dad's day, each town used to set it, though. Well, that's kind of interesting. Parts of Indiana used to not follow the daylight savings. So when we would go to Gen Con in the earlier part of 2000s, you'd have to try to remember, well, so is it Eastern time zone now or not? And it was a whole weird thing because it was in the summer, so it would be during daylight savings time. Relatively recently, they decided finally as a state to all go one way or the other, so that makes it a lot easier for us, a little bit, you know, because it's important that the Gen Con people, you know, everything works out well for us, I guess. I don't know. What else have we got? Greetings from Malaysia. That's good morning from Atlanta. Hello from Finland. Just made it to your live stream from fishing trip. Well, that sounds fun. I used to fish with my dad, but I haven't fished in years. Yeah. Hello from Racine. Bryant, how's it going? I'm doing well, thank you. I was sort of down. I don't want to say I was in your neck of the woods, but I was closer than I am currently yesterday. Yesterday I was at I was in Milwaukee, technically Franklin, Wisconsin, which is outside of Milwaukee. And I was at a game designers meetup to meet up with some friends of mine who are designing some games. And I wanted to kind of check it out, see what it was like, and kind of hang out with them a bit. And so I hung out with Eric and Dave, and that was a lot of fun. And got back a little bit later than I thought I was going to, actually, last night. So, you know, that's not too bad. Adam, which do you hate more, elves or daylight savings time? Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not a fan of elves. Daylight savings time is sometimes inconvenient. But on the other hand, this evening, when it would normally get dark around 6, it's not going to get dark around until 7. So that's, I guess, a benefit. All things considered, I would think that at this time, I don't even know, like daylight savings, I think, had something to do with the farmers and helping to something, or I don't know, whatever. We have lights now, we could skip it, but we're not going to, evidently, so there we are. I've got a little something in my throat, so I apologize. Hey, moderator Matt showed up and says, "Oh goodness, I am hungover." See, I didn't drink anything yesterday, so I can't say that. I do have a little bit of a headache, but other than that, I apologize, Matt. I'm sorry that you are hungover. You know what's good for a hangover? I've found, and I don't use it all the time. It's a weird technique. It's called not drinking heavily the night before. That's the best thing for a hangover, but it's not much fun, admittedly. So it doesn't always work, I guess, is the point. So yeah, but it's good to see you, Matt. March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day, but it's also this upcoming Friday. Matt, our faithful moderator, his company, Wreckage, which I've talked about before, they're doing a Kickstarter with some new stuff. I think version 2.0 of the rules, I think. Or at the very least, I know they're adding vehicles to the game and a new faction and stuff like that. So I'll be linking to it on the Facebook and things like that. And I'm looking forward to it because the video that they're doing for the Kickstarter, I did some of the voiceover. So that's kind of my first voiceover gig, as it were. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that works out. Unless it's really bad, then it was some other dude. It wasn't me at all. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah. Joshua says it's a bad day to be hungover with the time change. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Although, to be fair, you lost an hour of hangover, maybe? No, maybe not. I'm not sure. Depends on, maybe you lost an hour of drinking. That's worse, frankly. Gosh. Let's see here. Got Sweden. Daylight savings is a false flag operation. Sure, I can see that. It's a good idea to mix is it a good idea to mix Slaves of Darkness with Khorne Bloodbound? I think you certainly could. The thing that you would miss from that would be if you wanted to use either of their specific allegiance properties, then you wouldn't be able to. If you wanted to just use an allegiance property that's just for Slaves of Darkness or just for Khorne Bloodbound, you wouldn't be able to if you mix them. But you would be able to use the Chaos ones because they're both Chaos. In my Chaos army, I mix Beastmen, Skaven, Nurgle, Rotbringer guys, Varangard, a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm a fan of that. But if you want to get very, very specific, then yeah, if you just go Sylvaneth, you get to have special Sylvaneth powers, or just go Stormcast. But if you were to take Stormcast and some elves because you wanted wizards or whatever, well, then you wouldn't be able to get just the Stormcast stuff because you'd have a mix. They claim it was for farmers, but it's actually an extra hour for shopping. Oh, that's a concept, I guess. Let me see here. Good day from Down Under. Good day. Chocolate milk is also a good hangover recovery aid, according to Drums Too Well. That's interesting. I had no idea. Let's see here. Gabriel says, I'm from Versailles. I prefer to specify because I don't know if there somewhere else in there are other Versailles, probably people from Versailles. I just begin to paint minis. I start with my Cyclades minis. I'm not familiar with Cyclades. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Let's see. Cleaning pirates for blood for blood and plunder while listening. Oh, that's fun. Necronaut Drummer says, good morning from the grim frostbitten north of Alberta, Canada. Snow, wind, and 18 degrees Celsius. Well, that's not much fun, in March. I mean, I live in Wisconsin, and we understand it's going to be winter and junky and all that stuff, and we're okay with it up until about March, at which point, when it starts to get, if it gets really cold or if it snows a bunch in March, we're kind of like, seriously, can't we be done with this by now? Now, if it starts to get nicer and then you go into April and April's all spring-like, and then in early May, all of a sudden there's a weird blizzard, that seems to be more amusing to us, we're like, well, that's weird. It's March, or it's May 6th, and then, there's a foot of snow. Hasn't happened in a long time, but it does happen once in a great while. But March is right about, excuse me, March is right about the time when Wisconsinites decide that we are pretty much done with winter. And if you get a day that's like 55, you'll see people walking around in shorts. Just be like, because it's spring, man. I don't care. It's 55, so I assume it's spring, and I'm going to wear shorts. That's the way it works here in Wisconsin. Let me see here. What do we got here? Hello from Finland. Sorry from the UK. Or hello. Hi from the UK. Sorry I'm late. It's okay, Darren. That's fine. What else have we got? Finland. Castle, Pennsylvania. What else have we got? Hello from Poland. Got any tips about using light colors like yellow or white? Always need several layers to cover anything that's beneath, and every time it ends up looking bad. Well, that's a very interesting question, because the subject of today's video, which I'll get to later on, is I'm going to be painting a bunch of yellow actually on a model, and I'll be showing you some parts later on. But I'm going to be painting yellow, and I have not done a lot of it before, so I've been doing some research, and I've got a plan laid out. For me, I'm going to be painting, I'm going to be priming it probably like a bone color, bleached bone, something along those lines, basically like khaki almost. And then I'm going to go with a dark yellow airbrush, do everything, and then start to layer up with lighter and lighter shades of yellow to kind of add the highlighting, where I'll start spraying from above. So I'm concerned because I also want to put a wash in there, so I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with. I might do a sepia wash and then have to go back and cover parts of it again with yellow. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting week. I'll explain more about it later on in this show. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting week because I'm going to have to frankly bust ass to get this model painted so I can make the video for this upcoming Friday. So for those of you who are watching right now, I can tell you right now, the Friday video this upcoming week, if everything goes well, God willing and the creek don't rise, is going to be a video about the finished painted model that I'm doing for Weta Workshops. So Weta Workshop is they're the guys that do the special effects for Lord of the Rings and a ton of other movies and all that jazz. And they've decided to make a game. They're making a kind of gateway game. It's board gamey slash, what do you call it? Board gamey slash, miniatures kind of game. And it's called Giant Killer Robots. It's currently on Kickstarter. It goes until, I think, the 27th. They wanted to raise $100,000. Last I looked, they were at $600,000, so it's totally funded. But the thing that's cool about it is that there's 4 factions. Each faction comes with 4 robots. There's one big one that's called a heavy hitter, which will be pre-painted, so you don't have to paint it or build it or anything. And then there will be 3 smaller ones, which will be colored plastic for each faction, but not painted. So you could paint them if you want to, but whatever. They're also going to have in the Kickstarter, they're going to have a painter's edition, which is the full game with the pre-painted stuff, blah, blah, blah. Plus, they're also going to send you unassembled, unpainted heavy hitters for you to do yourself if you want to. So what they've sent me is 2 of them so that I can kind of do that, because no one else has really done much in the way of the videos about the painter's edition. So that's what I'm doing. If you want to see some play, let's play kind of things of the game, I know there's one on Mini Wargaming, there's one on Beasts of War, there's a couple other ones around there. So it's a cool concept, it's a cool game, I love the artwork. And so when I reached out to them last week, actually, and they FedExed me from New Zealand these models, which I'll show you in a little bit. So yeah, it'll be it's going to be interesting, but I'm going to be painting a yellow model, which I've never really done, to get back to the original question. And it's going to be interesting. So I'll talk about it in the video on Friday as well, as far as like how I did it and how it hopefully worked. It'll be great. Let's see here. Hey, from Australia, our power problems are so bad the moment Elon Musk wants to fix it. Yeah, southern part of Australia, from what I understand, there's a problem with the grid. I saw something yesterday, a headline about how Elon Musk will fix it in 100 days or it's free, which makes him sound a little bit like a used car salesman or something. But yeah, anyway. So I'm sorry to hear about the power problems there in Australia. That's weird. Question for Uncle Adam. How does daylight savings time give an extra hour of daylight? Do they slow the Earth's rotation or just change its tilt? I believe that Superman flies backwards for a while, and that slows it down, and then we get the extra hour, and then in the spring he goes forwards really fast, and then we lose a... I'm not sure exactly. I'm no time scientist, but I think that's what it is. It's a beautiful 56 degrees on our way to the mid 80s in Los Angeles. Spring has sprung after the wettest winter I can remember. Well, from what I understand, Doran Jr., you guys kind of needed the rain, didn't you? So, yeah, because, you guys were like in a big drought. So I have heard that it's rained a bunch there, which is probably disconcerting to some degree, like landslides and stuff. But also, you probably needed the rain, so, that's cool. But I guess, spring early, that's cool too, I guess. Sir Chud says it's all about the undercoat. I'm assuming that this is a good, this is refer back to the yellow. And it's true. If you were to prime a model black and then try to paint it yellow, good luck. Not going to work very well. Hugo says brown is a good base for yellow. Snakebite leather. Yeah, I may do that too if I've got a color that's close to it in airbrush. But I was also, I know I have primer that is not that color, but I have primer that's like a nice... kind of a, not a yellow color, like I said, like a bone color, something along those lines. So yeah. Someone says, I base orange before yellow for Imperial Fists. Yeah, that makes sense too. And the trick is the primer. That's going to be the kind of the big trick. So yeah. What else have we got? Gianna's here from the U.S. correspondent from Beasts of War, and she's checking stuff out. There we go. That's cool. Hi, Gianna, and Matthew's talking with her. Matt just posted a link to the Kickstarter for Giant Killer Robots, which you can find, on Kickstarter. It looks really cool. I love the art style. It reminds me of that video game, Borderlands. Ossel says, just starting to paint up my first Space Marine chapter. Does anyone know if water slide transfers can be applied to metallic paints? Yes, but, so here's the but. What I would do with basically any water slide decal on any surface, not just metallic paints, once you get the surface all where you want it, cover it in gloss coat. Like, if there's just like a panel and you're going to put a decal on it, just do that entire panel in gloss coat. And then, once you've got that, then you need to put the... once you do that, then you need to put the gloss coat's dried. You want to put gloss coat over whatever material you're doing, and then you want to put the decal on top of the gloss coat. And then later on, you're going to, matte varnish the whole thing, so you'll lose the glossiness. But putting a decal directly onto regular paint is never a good idea because it will almost always start to suck up a little bit of air underneath it and get cloudy. So you always want to put down a nice gloss coat layer before you put down the decal, because it just makes the decal stick a lot easier. It makes you not get that cloudiness underneath the layer of the plastic. That's the way I always do it. And I don't do a ton of them, admittedly, but when I do it that way, and it works out really great. If you watch any of my videos, you will see there's those three, in the intro, there's the three slides that come in, The middle one has got Flames of War tanks in it, and all the decals I did in that, I painted the tanks, and then I threw down gloss coat where I was going to put the decals on the side or the star or any of that kind of stuff, and then, matte varnished everything, and it worked out great. That's the best way to go about it, actually, because then you not only that, but you generally don't have a tendency, and if you gloss over after the decal's all dried and you gloss over it, you won't see the edges of the plastic where you cut the decal, and that helps a lot too. So there are materials you can buy called Microset and Microsol, S-O-L, which are designed to kind of help with that to some degree. I've never really used them, but then again, I'm also not usually trying to put a decal on a curved surface or a really bumpy surface or anything like that. That makes decals a lot more difficult, but there's a lot of different things you can go online and look up a lot about decals and how to put them on. They can be great, but they do take some work. So let's see here. I've been trying to use the wet palette idea. I have an issue where when I use it, the paint goes clumpy, spreads out, and the paper soaks up. Any tips? I have noticed certain paints don't love to sit on the wet palette for a really long time. Like, I have noticed that a lot of Vallejo paints, if I come back like 2 or 3 days later, the Vallejo paints will have separated sometimes on the parchment paper. And sometimes if I want to, I can just sort of wiggle them around a bit, sort of remix them back on the paper. But sometimes I don't do that, and I just kind of put another blob next to it. Yeah, otherwise I don't know about going clumpy. That's interesting. Maybe there's not enough water in the wet palette. That's a potential possibility. So, yeah. Jason says use microsol and microset solutions for decals. They are amazing. Like I said, I've not really messed with it a ton, but I do know that, yeah, they, especially like if you're doing like a shoulder pad for, let's say, a Space Marine who's got that curve and you need to put an icon on there, it's really difficult to get that flat piece of plastic to conform. But if you use those materials, they will soften up the plastic and cause it to bend a little bit. But it's still not super easy, which is why I've never bothered to put decals onto shoulder pads. Whenever I see an army with a lot of really cool decals and shoulder pads and all that jazz, with a lot of them, that's a lot of work. And so, yeah, it's cool. Let's see, what else have we got here? Fatal Arrow says, how long has this been going? About 22 minutes. Usually starts around 9 a.m. my time. And it will normally go until 11 a.m. my time, so that's about 2 hours. What else have we got? Hello from Newport News, Virginia. How you doing? Question for Uncle Adam. I just put together my first Forge World model. My God, that mold is janky. Any advice for building Forge World stuff? That's a good question. Number one, don't use plastic cement or plastic glue. You need to use cyanoacrylate, aka CA glue, aka super glue, because and I found this out the hard way, the plastic cement stuff is designed to kind of melt plastic a little bit, just a tiny little bit, and then fuse the two pieces of plastic together. And resin's not technically the right kind of plastic for that, so they won't stick very well. So you want to use CA glue for that. Secondly, yeah, Forge World's weird stuff. I mean, it's not as terrible as Finecast. Like, Finecast is so bendy and weird. And when I show you these pieces, which are in resin, I think, a little bit later on for the models for that I got for Giant Killer Robots, this is a very different resin that I'm used to. It's very sturdy. Well, stiff? I don't know. It's really weird. So, yeah, otherwise, make sure to clean the models. Make sure when you've got the pieces and everything like that, you throw in some water and just a tiny little touch of detergent, and then just start working on them like with a toothbrush and let them dry, let them air dry on a piece of paper, because you want to get that mold release off. That mold release, it's this powder they put into the molds that allows it to basically, like, you pop it out, you want it to be able to pop out of the mold, so you have to have something to let it to release, where if you don't do that, it doesn't work. So yeah, try to clean. You want to clean that stuff off. If you paint over the mold release without taking it off, the paint won't stick. So that's the most important thing with resin models. Oh, and if you do sand the resin models, like if you use a file on them or anything like that, you want to wear a mask, because those little particles will get in your lungs, and that's not good. So don't do that. Let's see here. What else have we got? The microset will help conform on any uneven surface, in my experience. Yeah, that's microset and microsol are those two things we talked about before that work out really nice for decals. Six Gunner asks, Adam, do you prefer self-made battlefield boards or ready battle mats? I bought one for Frostgrave made by Deep Cut Studios, and it looks amazing. I have a bunch of battle mats. So, I mean, a really nice board that's been maybe carved a bit out of foam or made out of materials or whatever always looks awesome. Sometimes it can be hard to get models on. You know what I mean? Like if it's got a lot of slanty bits to it and you set a model on it, excuse me, and the model slides downhill or falls over, that can be problematic. And though it looks great in a diorama from a distance, it can be really problematic for other, reasons, like sliding model syndrome and all that kind of jazz. So that's a problem. Also, they're hard to transport around, in some situations. So that's also kind of an issue. So I do like battle mats. They're great and convenient, but admittedly they don't look the best. In comparison to a really nice board, they don't look the best. But as long as, if I want to go down to the shop and play a game, and I just bring a mat, because I know, they have some stuff there, certainly, but it's just easier. So I do like mats. I've got what have I got? I've got a bunch of different mats from the Fat Mat people, which was Table War and Frontline Gaming. They were partners and they made Fat Mats, and now they are two separate companies, and that's what they do. So yeah, it's interesting to see those different kind of mats that are. There's a lot of companies out there. I'm going to be seeing a lot of stuff at Adepticon this year. I'm actually going to talk to a couple different companies about their mats and things like that. So it'll be good. Let's see, what else have we got? Hi there from China. How's it going? For Forge World models, according to Shay, also check out Warhammer TV's older video now about working with Forge World models. It's very educational. Sure, yeah. Warhammer TV is a great YouTube channel in that they put out stuff like literally every day, I believe. So, well, at least every weekday. Maybe they don't on the weekends. I'm not sure. But they do put out a ton of videos, and it's a great place for a lot of information. So, I mean, it's obviously very specific to just their stuff for the most part, but a lot of that stuff translates relatively well to other stuff. So, yeah. Let's see here. Half of my Space Hulk minis are painted. Can't find motivation to carry on with the rest. Well, yeah, Space Hulks does have a decent amount of miniatures. I mean, there's like at least 13 miniatures for the, Terminators, and there's 20 to 30 for the Gene Stealers. So, yeah, that kind of motivation can be tough. I find, and I've done a video about this in the past, I find that kind of motivation for me, it's trying to figure out what audiobook I'm going to listen to while I'm painting, or what podcasts I'm going to listen to. The audiobooks work great because if the story's good in the audiobook, you kind of want to get back to listening to the audiobook, and to do that, well, you kind of have to go and do your painting. Because, like, most people don't just put in an audiobook and just sit there and listen to an audiobook, like in the living room, because that's sort of weird, right? You listen to them in the car if you're driving long distances, or you listen to them while you're doing something else with your hands, if you're me. So modeling, doing painting, building models, that kind of stuff. So, having an audio component to it is something that really helps, because then you can go, well, I just don't really feel like painting right now, but I do want to find out what happens in the next chapter, so I'm going to put that in, and then, well, I'm there anyway, I might as well do some more painting or whatever. So try that out. Like I said, I've done a video in the past about it, but it works out. I find that's how I get motivated. It's not the only way, but it's one of the good ways, I find. So, what do you think about duct tap with patterns of rock instead of gluing stuff to the bottom? I don't know. Duct tape, maybe, with patterns of rock. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure what that is, Bryant. I have been kicking around the idea of making my own sort of. There's this stuff called Instamold. I believe you can get it from maybe Cool Mini or not. There's maybe other places you can get it, maybe eBay. And it's like these little plastic sticks, and they kind of look almost like hot glue, except not round. They're like rectangular. And you throw them into, like, you go get like a coffee mug, you put it in the microwave, you get it so it's super hot, boiling. You dip that stuff into it for X amount of seconds. You pull it out, and now it's malleable. So now you've got this plastic that's super malleable, and then you take it and you press things into it. Maybe it's something you want to make copies of, like I don't know, like a base or whatever. You do something like that, and you make a texture, you do things like that, and then you take it out and you put it into a glass of cold water, and then it hardens up, and now you have this mold. I mean, granted, it's a one-part mold, but then you can take green stuff, knead it all up, and press it into that, let it dry a bit, pop it out, and now you have copies of the thing that you were doing. And it's called Instamold. That stuff will work really well for if you want to make, textured bases. If you come up with a cool texture, copy it with that Instamold, then you can just press green stuff into it, make bits, put them on your bases, do all that kind of stuff. I've been kicking around the idea of doing some of that because I have some interesting textures I'd like to sort of copy and be able to use in bases for a specific project. So I think that'd be kind of cool, but yeah. Siri asks, have you traveled to many different countries? I have not. I don't even have a passport. I need to do that eventually someday. I would like to travel to like the UK and check out that kind of stuff. But I'd like to go to Canada as well. But I don't currently, I haven't done that. America's pretty big, and so there's a lot of parts of America I haven't seen yet either. So yeah, that's where it's at right now. Hello from Uzbekistan. You've said you've gotten into historicals. Thoughts on black powder or pike and shot warfare? I'm thinking of trying, but it seems a lot more difficult to make real than skirmish. I've neither played black powder nor pike shot. I was at a store, like I said yesterday, down in the Milwaukee area that had both of them in stock, which I was kind of surprised by because it's not something you a lot of times see in stores. But this store had a really nice, it wasn't a huge miniature selection, but they had a really nice miniature selection. They had Bolt Action, Conflict 47, Infinity, War Machine, Pike Shot, Frostgrave, Black Powder I noticed as well, and a couple others that I was kind of surprised by, frankly. But yeah, I don't know a ton about that system. The only historicals that I've been playing or working on really have been Flames of War, Bolt Action, not exactly, more Conflict 47, which is based off of Bolt Action. It's compatible with Bolt Action, and it's kind of historical, but it's also alternate history. So it's 1947, but the World War II is still going on, and there are zombie troopers and plasma tanks and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's mostly, there's still guys with machine guns too as well. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Have you ever played the original Hero Quest made in 1989? I have not. I've got plenty of friends who've talked about it and who have played it, but I've never played it. I didn't really start getting into anything even close to miniatures based until the very early 90s. So a couple of years later, 89, I was just finishing high school. So I was playing more in the way of, what was I? I started playing Silent Death, or Space Hulk. Silent Death was a spaceship game, but Space Hulk is the one that we all know. Silent Death was a spaceship game that was made by Iron Crown Enterprises. I believe they're out of business now. Green Stuff World, according to the Noob Painter, has a product called Blue Stuff. It works for molding as well. That I have some of that in the basement as well. That's like if I remember correctly, it's like a 2-part material. You mix it together kind of like you do with green stuff, but it's called Blue Stuff. You mix it together, and then it becomes like a molding thing. And it comes in 2 little tubs because it has to stay apart from each other. Otherwise, it'll obviously turn into a thing that you don't want it to turn into right away. So yeah, I've got some of that. I've never used it actually. A guy that I know gave it to me, I think. Or did I? No, or did I order it from eBay? I don't remember. But I've had it for a long time. I've just never pulled the trigger on it. The Instamold stuff, I kind of like that stuff too, just because it's the other thing that's really cool about Instamold that I don't think you can do with Blue Stuff. Instamold allows you to, like, if you're tired of that mold now, you just throw it back into hot water and you can turn it into something else. So that's kind of cool about Instamold is that, with the Blue Stuff, once you've made that mold, it's that mold now. But with Instamold, you can reuse that piece of material over and over again. So that's kind of a neat thing too. Matthew says, I would link to this Instamold thing, but all I find are ear molds. Maybe it's called Instant Mold. I don't know. It was on the Cool Mini or Not website when I bought it. Like in their, it's in their store where they sell modeling supplies and stuff. I'm assuming it's still out there, but I could be wrong. There's kitty shenanigans going on back there right now. Let's see here. What else have we got? I've played around with Blue Stuff. Same like Instamold, but blue. Works okay on flat things, not so well if you want to completely cover bits. No, if you wanted to do a 2-part mold, which is when you try to make it, that doesn't work as well. Partially because if you're trying to press green stuff or whatever into it, it's really hard to press green stuff into a 2-part mold. You know what I mean? That works best for 1-part molds. So like it works great for if you want to make if you want to make something that you're going to add on to something else. Jesus. If you want to make there's birds outside, and it's cat apocalypse going on currently. I apologize. If you wanted, if you had a symbol that you wanted to put on the side of a tank, You know, maybe it's a skull. Just saying. You could copy it kind of with that stuff and then make little versions of it and be able to stick it on. But you have that flat back to it because you're just pushing green stuff into the mold, waiting for it to dry, peeling it out, sticking it on there. It works well for that kind of stuff. Or if you want to use it for, you know, basing or whatever, that kind of stuff, it works great for that too. Let's see here. Instant Mold is on Amazon and the Cool Mini or Not shop. So it's not Insta Mold, I apologize. It's Instant Mold. Let's see here. The new painter says, Adam, you're thinking of something else. Blue stuff is just like Instant Mold, just blue. Huh. That's interesting. There's something else I've got in the basement that comes in 2 tubs, and you mix it together, and it turns into a mold. But if blue stuff is just you melt it in a hot, you know, a cup of coffee, well, not actual coffee, but you know what I'm saying, a hot mug of water, and then, you know, you can remelt it later on. That's interesting. Huh. Let's see here. The new painter says there are some binary epoxies that are blue, but they're not reusable, though. Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. Malik says that Mini Girl gave me the idea actually from one of her videos, but pressing oven-bake Sculpey on Hearst Art's floor tile to make an impression, then bake the Sculpey and cut to size for basing. Yeah, I think I've seen that one as well. Mini Girl has a bunch of videos on YouTube, but she hasn't made any in a long time, more than a year. But she used to do a lot of videos about basing, and she had a lot of kind of cool techniques and things like that. So if you look up Mini Girl somewhere, you can find that. So yes, let's see here. What do you think about Stormcast Vanguard Paladors? So let's see. I was at the shop, my local shop, on Friday, and he got a bunch of the new Stormcast stuff in. The Paladors, I think, are guys riding on the smaller sort of Griffhound type guys with the spears, if I remember correctly. I haven't looked at any of the rules or anything like that. I did order from my local shop, which is why I was there on Friday. I ordered the Lord Aquilor, which is basically a big Stormcast guy with not a bolt gun, but kind of like almost like a crossbow, and also a big sword, and he's on a huge griffin type thing. So it's got like a bird head and you know, talons in the front, but like cat legs in the back. That's an awesome model. So the thing about the Stormcasts is that all the stuff that's been Drake related, all of them riding on, you know, like there's the Star Drake, there's the Dracoths, all those things where they're riding on those weird lizards, I cannot stand the look of those lizards. I just don't like the way they were modeled. They all have weird, you know how like you see a bulldog and they have that sort of those front legs, I can't see what I'm doing here, but they kind of walk like this and they're sort of bow-legged. It looked to me like every single one of those lizards was kind of part bulldog, and I just did not like the look of them. When I first saw that Lord Aquilor, where he's on that super cool bird cat griffin thing, I was like, yes, that is the thing. I want one of those. I don't even know if I'm ever going to run him, but I'm going to definitely paint him and make him look cool. So yeah, I picked one of those up on Friday. But I did see they have a bunch of other like smaller griffin type guys where it's more of a cavalry. You get a box of 3. I didn't pick any of those up yet. So I don't know anything about the stats, but they do look better in my mind than any Stormcast riding on a giant lizard guy, at least in my opinion. I just did not care for those models, the big lizard guys. So let's see here. Looks like Matt found a link to the reusable stuff, and he has accepted my apology, which is awesome. I don't remember giving it, but there it is. I'm going to assume I did. Eric French says, have you ever primed with gesso? Can you spray first, then cover missed areas with it? You probably could. I have primed with gesso before. Not a ton. I wanted to try it out, so I have primed a couple of models that way. It works surprisingly well. The original video that I saw about it, or blog post or something, said, well, take your gesso. So gesso, for those of you that don't know, is a material that painters use. If you paint oil paints directly onto canvas, untreated canvas, over time, the acids in the oil paints, I believe, will destroy the canvas. So you don't want that. So you have to cover the canvas in something, and it's called gesso. And back in, medieval times or whatever, the Renaissance, gesso, I think, had a lot of chalk in it. It was always white. Now it's more of an acrylic, and you can get it in lots of different colors. So I bought some black gesso, and I used it to try to prime some models, because this was before I had an airbrush. So I wanted to prime models when it was winter, and I didn't want to spray in the house, so I wanted to find something else. The video that I watched said, oh, mix it 50-50 with water and then, brush it on to whatever model you want to prime. Well, that did not work, frankly, for me. So either I was doing it wrong or there was something else. It just was, the gesso would just bead up on the model and not cover. So eventually I'm like, all right, well, fine. I'm just going to try it straight out of the pot. And I glopped it on, and I thought, well, that's not going to work. But it actually did, because as the gesso dries, because it's an acrylic, so it's got some plastic in it, as it dries, it tightens up on the model. So you still got, definition, like you could see the little lines in the hair on this guy. It was I forget what model it was, but he had like a big cloak and a gun, and he wasn't wearing a helmet, so you could see his hair. And it worked out actually pretty well. So, definitely if you're interested, if you're in a situation where, you don't have an airbrush, but you also can't spray paint because maybe you live in an apartment and it's difficult, or you live someplace where I do, where it's cold right now and you can't go outside and rattle can because your rattle can will freeze. Try out the gesso. It's something you'd have to probably go to an art supply store more often than not to find, unless you can buy it online from someplace. But it does work. Like I said, I got the black stuff because I generally like to prime black on most things that I paint. Not everything, but on a lot of things. But it does come in other colors too. Probably comes in white. I know it comes in white. That's the sort of standard. It may come in gray. I don't know. But definitely you can get it in black and also in white. It's more popular in white, though, as far as... Because, if you're painting a canvas, you generally want to prime in... or not prime. You are technically priming, I guess. But you want to gesso the canvas white normally. Twerch says those lizards are dumb. I agree. Yeah, I just did not like the sculpts on those lizard, cavalry and all that stuff, the Dracoths or whatever they're called. I just don't know. Let's see. We use some 2-part putty at work that is blue and dries hard to make molds of damage to aircraft components to allow for accurate measurements. Oh, that's interesting. Siri says, "Can you show me one of your cats to camera?" No, I don't know where the catpocalypse has stopped for now. I'm not sure where they all went. Let's see here. Sasha says, "I've made bases with Super Sculpey and a texture roller pin from Green Stuff World. Not the easiest way to do bases, but you can do unusual textures like a Space Hulk or Industrial Area." Yeah, Green Stuff World does some really super cool stuff. So Green Stuff World is a company that they make a bunch of different things, but one of the big things that they make, their most popular thing, are these acrylic, they're about, I don't know, maybe 10 inches long, acrylic, almost like a rolling pin. And then they have a texture on them. So maybe it's cobblestone, or maybe it's, wood plank or whatever. So you make some green stuff, you take the blue and the yellow and you squish it together and you flatten it out someplace. And they have instructions on their website about the best ways to do it so it doesn't, because green stuff can be really crazy sticky. So you go and have a lot of water on it. And then you roll this big, thick, those things are maybe 1.5 inches thick, in diameter. You roll this big kind of rolling pin thing over it to put the texture on there. Then you let it dry a little bit, but not completely dry, and then you can kind of cut the circle and all that stuff, and then you can, use it like you said, as a base. And yeah, there's a lot of different cool things you can do with it. There's a bunch of companies that make things like it. Like they're the ones that make, I think, the nicest, like big, thick, heavy acrylic, rolling pins. There's another company called Happy Seppuku, I think, and they do more molds that you just press green stuff into. They do like a flat mold, so it's like a flat mold that has some sort of texture on it, and you just press green stuff into it, let it set up, and then eventually peel it out, and then use it for however you want to use it. But so that works out really well. Sean Cavanaugh says, no, my son loves the Dracoths and he's having a rage fit in the back of the room. Well, I apologize. You can love them. I don't like them. Everybody has different opinions. I just don't like the look of them. They're super powerful in the game, that's for sure, but they're just not my cup of tea. So, if I don't buy them, there's more of them for you to buy. So take that into consideration as well. John Trotter says... or Trotter, I'm probably mispronouncing it. I apologize. Any thoughts on Rune Wars? So Rune Wars is a game that Fantasy Flight, yes, well, Asmodee, Fantasy Flight, whatever they call themselves now, is coming out with very soon. I have a suspicion we'll see it at Adepticon. It was announced at Gen Con last year. And it's a miniatures game. It's the first, fully proper, what we think of miniatures game, to some degree, that Fantasy Flight's ever done. They're not pre-paints. So unlike all the X-Wing stuff, which is a pre-paint, these are not pre-painted. They are... Basically what they've done is they've made real rank and flank, like you have the rectangular bases and there's a bunch of guys in the rectangular bases, just like old school, Warhammer Fantasy or Kings of War does it like that way right now. So they've made a game system like that, but from what I understand, they've mixed it a little bit with X-Wing. Like, you know how in X-Wing you have those little crazy rulers for turning and all that kind of stuff? When you want to move your guys, you have the same, not the same, but like that kind of little rulers so you can move your guys and, wheel around on the battlefield and all that kind of stuff. So you're not just using a tape measure, you're using those little cardboard, ruler things to get your guys around on the battlefield. And but they are not pre-paints, so you need to paint them yourself. So it's interesting. I don't generally like rank and flank. I don't like the rectangular movement trays. That's why I never got into fantasy. So I doubt that it's going to be for me, but I am interested in seeing how it works out. It's going to be interesting now that Fantasy Flight and Games Workshop are no longer working together. Now Fantasy Flight, I've always heard Fantasy Flight couldn't make much in the way of real miniatures games because that would be biting into Games Workshop's business to some degree. X-Wing was a different story because they were pre-paints, and frankly, they don't do pre-paints over at Games Workshop, so I guess it was okay. But now that X-Wing sells more than 40K, there's a website called ICV2, and it's an industry website for the gaming industry and all kinds of genre nerd culture stuff. They do every quarter. They do a big report that talks about all the different games and where all that kind of stuff and sales numbers and all that jazz. And the last several quarters, X-Wing, basically it's worked like this. Number 1 seller is X-Wing. Number 2 is 40K. Number 3 is War Machine. This time, finally, number 4 is Age of Sigmar, and number 5 is Hordes. So Games Workshop, that's part of, I think, partially one of the reasons why Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight are not working together anymore. It will be interesting to see what comes of Rune Wars, how it works. Like I said, I'm really kind of hoping that maybe I can get a demo of it at Adepticon if they're there. I'm not 100% sure if they're going to be or not, but we'll see. It's interesting. Let's see here. Hey, finally catching you live again. Great day here in the Netherlands. Just wanted to say I'm really enjoying the content. Keep up the good work. Well, I appreciate it. Hello from Tampa, Florida. Can no longer find Kill Team on the Games Workshop website. Calling stores to see if they can hold it for me. Huh, that's weird. I wonder why it's not on the website. I wonder if they're out, maybe? Like it's no longer listed on the website, or it's just not, like it's sold out. The store I was at yesterday had, a couple copies of it, I think. So, yeah. I remember seeing it on the wall at this store I was at yesterday. So it's, if look around online and see if you can find it, or call local stores and see if you can grab one. But yeah. It feels like as though you're one of the few positive voices about Sigmar. How do you rank the sword and sorcery skirmish games? That's a good question. I don't know a ton of them, frankly. As far as skirmish games, like for sword and sorcery, one of my favorite, like little small skirmish games is Song of Blades and Heroes. It's not incredibly deep, but it's a lot of like quick fun, and I do enjoy it. It's great for me. I love to teach it at conventions. When I go to a convention, I teach, Song of Blades and Heroes, which is made by Ganesha Games out of Italy, but it's in English and a bunch of other languages as well. It's great stuff. Otherwise, I do like Frostgrave quite a bit as well. That's, I guess, really more of a skirmish game, but it's a little bit more campaign-based. I did also, when I was at this shop yesterday, for this game designer meetup thing that I went to, I did pick up a copy of Dragon Rampant, which is from Osprey Games. I've been wanting to check it out for a while. It's going to be skirmish, and it's fantasy. They also have a game called Lion Rampant, which is skirmish but historical, but I wanted to try out the fantasy one, so I grabbed a copy of that. It was literally $18 American. It's a thin little book, but Osprey puts out a bunch of cool little thin, inexpensive books that are kind of neat like that. So I do want to try that one out. I haven't played it yet, though. Matthew says, it's only been 45 minutes. I may die during this chat. Well, if you do, let me know. Oh, because then I'll send a card, that and I'll miss you at Adepticon, Matt, because I'm looking forward to seeing you. So, hey, Uncle Adam, do you think it's worth getting a 12-month subscription to White Dwarf? I think the new White Dwarf is definitely a step in the right direction. I wouldn't get a I wouldn't get a paper probably subscription to it, just because then you got magazines laying around the house. Some people love that kind of stuff. I would prefer the digital version, and I don't think they're currently offering it. At least they weren't when they redid it, but I don't know if they are now. So that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. Let's see here. What do you think of Games Workshop doing 80s throwback models like the 30th anniversary Space Marine and the recent remake of the Chaos Hero Slambo? I know a lot of people, I did not know much about Slambo at all, frankly, but a lot of people really enjoyed Slambo. It was a crazy looking little sculpt, and he's an odd model, but I think it's cool that they're doing some of that stuff because people kind of dig it. And the Slambo model specifically, I think, is interesting because it really shows a bit of a, like a little bit of a sense of humor that was lost for a while with Games Workshop that seems to be kind of creeping back into it, which I like. And we should all be kind of happy about that because it gives them the ability to sort of understand that, you know, not everything is so serious all the time. So I do dig the fact that they kind of brought that model back. I think that was smart, and I think it probably did well for them. So yeah. Let's see here. Sean Kavanaugh says that Games Workshop is dropping Kill Team ahead of the 40K revision. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to check that out. Now, well, I wonder if there may be... Well, because here's the deal. So if there's going to be a new revision to the 40K rules, Kill Team has got the 7th edition rules in it. So maybe they're going to wait and then re-release it once they have the new little book for 8th edition. That could make sense. That's very possibly a good indicator that it's coming soon. That being said, if you want the Kill Team rules, not the 7th edition rules that come, the little one that comes in the Kill Team box set, if you just want the Kill Team rules, you can get those online through like Kindle or, well, I don't know about Kindle. I know that Apple Books or whatever, iOS, iBooks, whatever it's called, I know you can get it from them. I know you can get it from the Google Books thing. I think you can just get them straight from Black Library as well. So you can buy the digital version of the Kill Team rules. But if you want the Kill Team box set that's got the Tactical Marines and also the Tau in it, it also comes with a little version of the 7th edition rulebook. That might be out of stock now because they need to start making the exact same box, but now with 8th edition little rulebook in there. That could be maybe why it's coming. There's a lot of people talking about how 8th edition is coming potentially as early as May. So there was just a thing I read recently about how Warhammer store / Games Workshop store employees have been told like no vacation from like this day to this day, and it's sometime in May. So there's a good chance that that may be either when the new Specialist game is going to drop, which is the Titanicus or whatever it's called, which is basically epic, or it's possibly going to be when 8th edition comes out. So we shall see. Let's see here. What else have we got? Rogue Trader original rules for the win. I never played the original Rogue Trader, but I've heard good things. Sort of. Let's see. Would GW's Silver Tower be considered a good gateway game? Some friends of my wife and I have expressed interest in a tabletop game night and looking for a good idea to introduce them to the hobby. I think so. I mean, it was pretty popular, and it's got some really cool models in it. So it's not a bad idea. Yeah, I could see that. Peter Pan asks, I don't get why Slambo is still in resin while the other re-releases from GW are all in plastic. Probably because it's cheaper for them. I don't think the plan was to make Slambo like from now on. You know what I mean? Like if they're going to run Slambo for a really long time, the next 5, 6, 7 years, then it makes sense to make the metal mold, which costs anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 sometimes, to be able to create injection molded plastic. If you're not going to be doing it that long and you don't see that being a good investment, then you make him in resin because the molds for resin are way cheaper. They're basically rubber as opposed to milled out, 3D printed steel and all that jazz. So yeah, that's a thing. When you don't have to crank out as many, that's where it comes from. Let's see here. What else have we got? Dennis Bauer says, summertime time. I'm not sure what that relates to. I'm sorry. I really want to play the new Warhammer Quest after learning it as a DM'd game. Oh yeah, it can be. It can be you can have a dungeon master / game master who runs it. That's a cool thing. From what I understand, Warhammer Quest is a lot of fun. It's a good dungeon crawl that way. Osel says, have you heard of the Heralds of Ruin kill team rules? I don't know if they're a precursor to the Games Workshop version, but they seem way more developed. Yeah, I have. I've played it a couple of times. They're a very different rule set. You still need to use the main rules for 7th edition or whatever, but then they've gone through and completely kind of redone the codices. That's the thing I kind of don't like about them. But, you know, there are people who do dig it. Regular kill team was around longer. You know, this version obviously is more recent, but kill team in general in 40K has been around for a long time. And so I don't know why. I have to admit, it would have been smarter, in my opinion, for the Heralds of Ruin people, which is basically a blog online, to have not called their version Kill Team. I think it would have got them. I mean, they haven't been sued or anything like that, but just why call your thing the same as Games Workshop's thing? You know, it just seems they should have probably called it something else, in my opinion. But yeah, it's out there for people if you want to check it out. It's free. You still need to have the 7th edition rules. You still need to have the codex for your army, but all the rest of the stuff is free download from Heralds of Ruin, which I think, like I said, is a blog somewhere on the internet. Let's see here. Matt says, hey, Adam, that game company that was by us at the Gameapalooza new game doing Hexplore It is doing well on Kickstarter. Oh, that's good. So Matt came up from the Chicago area to see me in October, because there's a small game convention here in town, and he came up to sell people Rec Age and show demos and do that kind of stuff, and he and I hung out, and we had way too much booze on Saturday night that night. But anyway, there was a guy who was across from us in the vendor area who was also local to this area, who was making a game called Hexplore It, which is basically kind of a board game aimed at RPG people. And they have a Kickstarter. So if you want to check that out, it's evidently doing well. There's a link there in the chat. You can take a look at that. Or just search for Kickstarter Hexplore It. So it's Hex Plore It. I don't know. But it's kind of like I said, it's a board game that's aimed towards RPG people, if that makes any sense. Zando says that Silver Tower might be too hard for a complete novice unless you assemble and paint it for them. There's a lot of work with that. Yeah, I mean, if you'd have to do the assembling and painting, but then teaching it as a board game, it's not too bad. You know, people who, if it's their very first ever board game, that's probably going to be a thing. It might be kind of difficult. But if they've played board games before, this is, you know, it's kind of a gateway game, and it sort of steps them in the right direction, at least hopefully. Hey, Uncle Adam, what do you think is the best Games Workshop specialty game, and which is best for its value? Well, that's a good question. I have to sneeze, and I'm trying to stop myself from it, so I'm thinking while I'm doing that. I think I'm going to be okay. So, I liked Necromunda, probably the best, but you can't get it right now. So, you probably, in theory, will be able to get it. Eventually, they're going to reproduce it, just like they did. Well, see, but I also like Blood Bowl a lot, too. And Blood Bowl you can get right now. So, yeah, I would say it's probably a tie between Blood Bowl and Necromunda, but right now you can't get Necromunda. I mean, you can buy used stuff on eBay or whatever, but they don't sell any Necromunda stuff. In theory, they're going to eventually. But if you want something that's specialist games now, Blood Bowl right now is really the only way to go. And Blood Bowl is a lot of fun. I enjoy it, at least. What have we got? Rusty says, sometimes they black us out on days at work, Games Workshop, and it's for something silly like the Mark Armor release this weekend or the Stormcast Zinch release days. Sure. And again, all those rumors are always like, well, okay, we've all been told, the GW employees have been told they can't, take off on these days and these days, so maybe that's when this is going to happen. And you can never really tell. I thought that 8th edition was going to come out last summer/fall. I told people to mark my words. I was wrong, as it turns out, which I will freely admit. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping it's this summer, frankly, but we'll see how it goes. It'd be really super cool if all of a sudden they just completely pulled an audible and decide to release it at Adepticon in a couple of weeks. That would be awesome. I don't know that they will, but it'd be super funny if they did, I think, because everybody would be like, wait, what? What'd you do? And so, yeah. And then maybe I could talk to some of them and do an interview about it. That'd be awesome. What else have we got? Hi, Adam. tuning in from London. Big fan of the channel. Your content is outstanding. Well, thank you. The wet palette video is awesome, and it changed the way I paint. And Sam's painting tutorials are brilliant. They are. Sam is super smart. He's very good. I'll be seeing him at Adepticon. I just ran into him at the shop a couple weeks ago. He was picking up the new Conan kind of board game that comes with lots of miniatures because he wanted to paint a bunch of them. And we talked about Adepticon, and I'll be seeing him at Adepticon, so I'm looking forward to that. I will be shooting more videos with him soon. As I've explained to several people, when I moved everything back to the basement instead of from being at the studio, it's a little bit more difficult than I thought to kind of get the two-camera setup kind of going, and I need to clear out more space, and there's all that and everything. Plus, I have all this other stuff I got to get done, and so, yeah, that's a whole thing. But I do want to do it very soon. So, yes. Let's see. What else have we got here? Also looking at starting a Skaven army, picking up the Dawn of Spires box. That's a good box set, I think, and I like Skaven. It's a lot of fun. Actually, I'm working on a Skaven Blood Bowl team, which I'm hoping soon to be able to get back to. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks. So, okay, I'm going to start getting into talking a little bit about today's subject, but I'm going to talk about some other stuff real quick to lead up to it. So, I've been invited to Valhalla again in the fall, in October. Valhalla 2017 is currently on Kickstarter. For those of you that don't know Valhalla is it's a wargaming retreat that takes place in Utah at this humongous 25,000 square foot resort / log cabin, which is awesome. It's run by Wargamer Girl, who's a YouTuber that does mostly videos currently about War Machine. She's big into Khador, and so anyway, I've been invited to go to that. It's in Kickstarter right now. I'm going to be going that again in the fall. So I'm going to make a video on, well, actually this evening, which will go live tomorrow. It'll be talking about the Kickstarter a little bit, just a short video, kind of to let people know about it and letting people know I'm going. This entire week, when I'm not at work, I'm going to be working on the stuff I'm just about to show you. My camera down here. Which is the stuff from Giant Killer Robots, the paint job that I need to do, because I need to get that done in time for Friday's video. Then, next week is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I've got to prepare for Adepticon, and then Thursday morning, I'm going to Adepticon. So then I'll be at Adepticon Thursday, it's the 23rd to the 26th. So I'll be at Adepticon the 23rd to the 26th, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. At some point during that time, I want to have a meetup at Adepticon for people that are going. Matthew, or moderator Matt, just said people better come by and say hello at Adepticon, and I agree. I want to do something. I'll probably post it on a couple of different places. I'll post it on the Patreon. I'll post it on Facebook. I'll probably post it on Twitter, whatever. So I'll post it around, but I'm definitely looking forward to seeing people at Adepticon. I want to talk to people and that kind of stuff, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of interviews, hopefully, and kind of stuff like that. So the next week and a half, 2 weeks is going to be awfully busy, but I just want to let you guys know about it. The other thing is that in 2 weeks from today, I'll still be at Adepticon, so I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do the live show. Might do the live show from the hotel room. They have slightly better internet than the last time I was at a convention and tried to do it. We'll see. I'll let you guys be informed on it. I'll keep you guys informed on what's going on, but it's going to be... I might do it on Sunday morning from the hotel. I might have to do it Sunday evening after I get back. We'll see. I would prefer to do it during the day, and we'll see how it goes from there. So, let's see. What else have we got here? Greetings from Argentina. I'm assembling my Chaos Knight while watching. Well, that's fun. What else have we got? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now is I'm going to show you some models. Well, I'm going to show you some parts of some models. So, I found out about Giant Killer Robots, actually not even from watching a gaming channel. Adam Savage, who's the redheaded guy from Mythbusters, not the guy with the big walrus mustache, but the other one. Now that Mythbusters is done, he's got a YouTube channel called Tested, and they talk about all kinds of different things, but it's usually kind of maker-type nerdy, geeky stuff and everything. He was in New Zealand visiting Weta Workshops, because he's into special effects and all that jazz, and while he was there, they showed him some stuff about this new game they're working on. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Well, then they did the Kickstarter, and I started watching videos on a couple other channels, like I said, on Mini Wargaming Beasts of War, and they were like doing some Let's Plays, like showing how the game is played, and what do you call it, prototype parts, which was cool. So I start looking at the Kickstarter, and I realize that there's a painter's level. So there's the normal level in the Kickstarter, which is, I don't know, I think it's like $100, and you get these pre-painted big models, and then, all the parts and components to the game. But if you pay more, you get the normal core rules, and the pre-painted parts, but then they also send you some parts unassembled, unpainted, so you can make your own heavy hitters. That's the big guys that come. There's 4 of them, one for each faction in the game. So I contacted Weta, and I said, hey, I don't really see anybody doing any videos about these, painting kits that you guys are going to be selling. Would you be interested in me doing a video about it? You send me some stuff, and I'll do a thing. So they said, yep, and FedExed me from New Zealand, the other side of the planet, these models that I'm about to show you. Now, these are not built, obviously, because I have to build them and paint them, and this is roughly, I think, how they'll come. I do not know that this is final materials, but this is the kind of the stuff. So for reasons I don't quite understand, they sent me a refrigerator magnet, so that's cool. They got this over here. That's awesome. But otherwise, this is just a few of the parts for these models. They sent me 2 models. If you look at the Kickstarter, each of the robots, each of the factions, there's a green faction, a blue faction, an orange faction, and a yellow faction. They sent me the models for the orange and the yellow faction. This is a piece of a torso and these are kind of, its light is too bright. I gotta figure out how to fix that. But so this is like the torso from one of them. This is the thing that's so weird about this stuff, is it's a strange resin that I'm not familiar with. This is the base. It's got a hex base. You can see where the feet are going to go in, but it's got this weird kind of it's a very strange material. It's not like Forge World resin. It's certainly not like fine cast resin, thankfully. But so here's a base. This is a big shoulder mounted like laser gun or missile launcher or something, but you can see the level of detail. You can see where things are going to glue together. They've got these little kind of faux hydraulic pieces and things like that. Here we go. But yeah, really interesting parts. This is a shoulder here, and it goes down into the arm. You can see, if I can get it to not be too bright, this is a hand down here. Holding on to is like a low slung kind of gun. So like the shoulder here, this would be the ground down here, and he's holding it and firing it kind of low down and stuff like that. This is a foot and a leg. So the foot part's down here, right? And you can see this part's going to go into, like, maybe it goes like this. I don't know. Maybe it goes like this. Here's the issue, though. So I got all these parts in a cardboard box. Here's some other ones. They were all wrapped like saltwater taffy in this weird tissue. Let's discover together what this is, if I can get this to open. I really got to fix the exposure on this camera, evidently. So this looks like an arm, I'm pretty sure. Like, that's a shoulder pad. There's your shoulder joint. That's an arm. There's no hand there, but whatever. It's like opening those Kinder eggs you see on the YouTube. Anyway, there's all these parts here, plus another dozen or so in this box, and it's for 2 different robots. And I have no instructions, so I'm going to have to figure out what goes where, predominantly by looking at the pictures from the website, from the Kickstarter, to try to figure out, like, I know this is the yellow guy's middle torso because it's a sphere, and it's I understand that. These models, when they're done, stand around 6 to 7 inches high. Maybe a touch higher on a couple of them, but then there's one, I think the blue guy is a lot shorter. But, so yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to be painting these guys up. Like I said, I'm going to be doing the yellow ones, so I'm kind of jumping out of my comfort zone in that I'm sitting down and trying to figure out how to paint yellow very quickly. I'm going to be, hopefully by the time I go to bed tonight, the one model will be built and primed. Well, not all built, because I'm going to need some subassembly stuff, but the parts that I'm going to need to build are going to be built. The other, and then primed. And then And then tomorrow night, I'm going to be doing a lot of the base color and all that stuff, all with airbrush and the highlighting, and then going from there, washes and details and all that stuff. And I hope to have it, I need to have it done by Thursday night so I can make a video for Friday, and then I can, do that and show it off and everything like that, and it'll be great. I want to do a lot of weathering. I want these things to look grungy. The whole concept behind Giant Killer Robots is basically everybody lives in these huge mega cities now, and all the old cities of the old world, Chicago, New York, LA, are all wastelands. So what they do is they use these giant robots to go in and salvage stuff from the cities and knock down the buildings. Well, they also make it into almost like a game show. So you watch it on TV, there's a lot of corporate sponsorship and all that stuff. So you're fighting against your opponents in the game to knock down buildings, but you can't salvage the building and get salvage rights for it until you put a bunch of sponsorship billboards on the buildings, and then if you get 4 billboards on the building, you get to knock it down and salvage it, but you're also fighting against the robots to get them to go away so that you can keep salvaging and all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a board game, but it's also a lot. I think it's going to be, from what I've watched so far, I think it's going to be a great gateway game because it's got a lot of range and cover and movement mechanics like you would have in a normal miniatures game, but it's hex based and it's on a board, and it's got it's got cool artwork and stuff that people who like board games really get into, you know what I mean? So, all these parts are going to be very interesting. Like I said, I'm planning on doing a lot of weathering. I'm going to use my own advice. Recently, I talked about how not everything has to be a completely different color all the time, and because these guys all have a very specific color theme to each of the factions, the 4 corporations, I'm going to stick to those pretty well. So like in these legs, most of the stuff that you're going to see here is going to be yellow. There's going to be a little bit of like maybe this joint here is going to be silver. The foot's probably going to be black. There's going to be a lot of, chipping and etching and stuff coming off on these knee pads, because literally this thing is walking and knocking buildings down with its knees. So there's going to be a lot of that going on. But I'm not going to go crazy with changing every last thing and making every last color, because it'll take really long. And the people who paint these things, if you look at the artwork on the Kickstarter, they follow a color scheme. Now, that being said, there's also, if you follow the artwork on the website, there's a lot of, I don't want to say decals, but there's a lot of like almost like graffiti type artwork that you're going to see on these. I'm going to try to do as much of that with airbrush as possible, making tiny little stencils with something called frisket film. Frisket film is for airbrush, and it's a sticky film, but only about as sticky as a Post-it note. And so it's clear. You lay it over a piece of artwork. It's got a backing on it so that it doesn't stick to everything. But you lay it over a piece of artwork, and then you cut what you want and then peel it away off of that backing, and then you stick it onto the thing and spray. So it's like a sticky stencil that you can put, where you want to put. But it's just, there's a lot of really kind of interesting parts to this. And it's going to be very interesting to try to figure out how to put together, but I think I can pull it off. And we'll go, so this is a leg because this is a foot, and this is also a leg because it's a foot. So you've got 2 very different styles. The thing is that all 4 of the big main heavy hitters, the big robots, are very different styles, so it's kind of interesting that way. All right, so that's going to be my week coming up. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting because I'm kind of trying to do it. I mean, I'm not going to go full display quality, but I do want to do much better than normal tabletop if I can. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, it's going to be tonight, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and then hopefully by Thursday night I'll have it done enough that I can do the video and go from there. So we'll see how it goes. But we get some questions here. How are the mold lines? To be fair, they're pretty much non-existent. That's what's so weird about this material. I haven't seen any mold lines. This is maybe, it's not blown out over bright, but it's not in focus either. So this is the scale. If you knew how big my head was, then you would know how big this is. But there's really very little. There's almost nothing in mold lines. I don't know how these are produced. I don't know again, like I said, and I'm going to find out hopefully this week. I sent an email on Friday, which in the New Zealand Saturday, so they weren't at work. But I want to find out, is this the type of stuff? Is this exactly the same material that the Painter Edition's going to get when the Kickstarter actually ships, which is going to be, I think, December of 2017? Or is it going to be plastic? Is this something just like a Mold Master? I don't even know. So it's kind of interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I've never worked in this type of material particularly before, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I really like this is that's one of the blue guys. He's firing missiles at the top. You can see he's got those kind of skinny, spindly little arms, and he's holding that sort of underslung gun. They've got different weapon systems they can use to shoot at each other. Plus, also, I don't know if they can attack buildings. Technically, I don't think they can. They mostly use it to attack each other. But yeah, so it's a cool art style. Like I said, it reminds me a lot of the video game Borderlands because everything looks very kind of cartoony. Not cartoony, but like cel shaded, drawn. That kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to doing the video for it and everything like that. So yeah. Let's see here. Epic Duck has a very good tutorial for painting yellow with an airbrush, says Darren. I'll have to check that out because I bought, in preparation for this while I was waiting for them to ship, I bought 3 different shades of, like, from an orange yellow to a bright yellow with Vallejo Game Air. So I'll be able to do some sort of layering and blending, hopefully, with those different colors. I think that's going to help speed things up quite a bit, doing it with the airbrush and doing a lot of the blending and the highlighting and stuff with the airbrush. That's going to speed things up quite a bit. Then it will be basically just doing some washes, doing some detail work. And like I said, I want to use a lot of chipping, so I'm going to use sponge chipping. So sponge chipping is, when you buy a lot of times when you buy miniatures, they come with like a piece of foam that's in the thing to kind of protect the miniatures, and it's that sort of gray kind of cellular foam. You take a piece of that, you rip off a corner of it, and then you dab it into brown paint, and then you just get a lot of it off on a piece of paper, like a piece of paper towel, and then you just dab to make it look like it's paint chipped off and that there's now rust underneath and that kind of stuff. That's what I'm hoping to do with these. The trick is that because these robots are supposed to be humongous, too much of that paint chipping will look weird somewhat because the scale won't be right. So I'm trying to figure out how to fix that problem. I think I'm going to have to not go too crazy wild with it, but we'll see how it goes. Like on something like a Rhino, it makes total sense. Something that's a 28 millimeter scale vehicle, paint chipping at that size works just fine. But like in Flames of War, if you were to use that same style of paint chipping on your tanks, then those actual chips on the tanks would be humongous, which would look a little weird, you know what I mean? So same sort of situation like this. If I use that same piece of foam to do some chipping on these guys, then that would mean that some of these paint chips would be 3 or 4 feet in diameter, which would be kind of weird scale-wise. So I got to sort of figure that out and kind of go from there. Yep. Big Beast says, what airbrush primer do you use? Love your channel. Thank you from 90 Degree, Arizona. Wow. Well, thank you. I use generally, for airbrush primer, I use Vallejo Airbrush Surface Primer is what it's called. I have also tried Badger's surface primer, or airbrush primer, which is called Stynylrez. I think I'm pronouncing that properly. There's a lot of Y's in that word, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so Stynylrez is another one, but I generally stick with the Vallejo. I don't know why. I think I like the color a little bit better to some degree. Stynylrez has also started doing colors. Vallejo, for quite a while, has had different primer colors that are not just black, gray, or white. They've been getting into other colors, and Stynylrez has just recently, from what I understand, started doing the same thing, Badger. So that really helps to make things quick. If you can prime it and also base coat it all in one shot, that always makes things sped up. Let's see here. What else? Valalore says, looks great, back to the old days of heavy gear. To some degree, yeah. I mean, they seem like heavy gear to me always, you had to have heavy gear was an old, and still, I guess they still make it. I think it's Heavy Gear Blitz now. But basically, like, heavy gears were kind of like power suits. They were 13, 14 feet tall, and there was a guy inside. Or a woman, don't get me wrong. But there was a person inside of these things. Whereas, like, in Battletech, these things were 30 meters tall. These things are quite large in comparison. The scale on this is, I don't know, it's maybe 6 millimeter, but these, there should be a really huge, and I don't know that there's people in, no, yeah, there's people inside. There's pilots. There's specific pilots they call out. I don't know if they're inside or if they're piloting it remotely, but there are definitely specific, like, named pilots that they have for the game, so that's interesting. Let's see here. Gaming Trolls says, I've been seeing this game everywhere listed, tested, and beats the war. Me and my kids picking this up to play looks like fun. Talking about the Giant Killer Robots. Yes. Like I said, I saw it, and I'm like, oh, the art style looks really cool, and Weta's making a game. That's really interesting. But then when I watched a playthrough, I was like, that's really kind of interesting, and I can see that being a great gateway game. And you know how I like gateway games because it helps bring people into the hobby. So I could definitely see me taking this to my local convention and doing a demo of it. That'd be a lot of fun because you can get up to 4 people to play. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So Armor Freak says, will you be getting in on the Relic Knights Kickstarter, Uncle Adam? Probably not. The Relic Knights stuff, frankly, is a little bit too anime for me. I don't know what it is. I don't have a problem with anime, for people who like anime and all that kind of stuff, that's great, but I've never liked the aesthetic, the art style just does not do it for me, and I don't know why. There's just certain artists that do things that I'm just like, nah, that's not for me. And then there's other artists where I'm like, wow, I really love that style. Everybody's got that. For me, it's the fact that, I don't know, I just have never really liked the art style for Relic Knights because it's so anime generally. So that's why I've not been interested in it, particularly as a game. I know that they've just come up with a new version kind of, and they're doing stuff like that. The models do look like they're well done, but again, like I said, it's the art style for me and I don't know anything about the system itself, the actual mechanics of the game. But honestly, for me, because I'm much more into painting than I am into... I do like to play. I never play competitively much. So because of that, the rules don't generally matter too much. That being said, I kind of stopped playing Dark Age because I really didn't like the rule set very well. But I do like the models, so I painted them, and then I played a little bit, and then found out I don't really like playing this. But, I still have the models because they're cool. So, yeah. Thomas Smith says, what is the scale of killer robots? Well, it's giant killer robots, so they're giant scale. Actually, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know that for sure. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe 6mm, but maybe it's different because they're, like I said, the models themselves are probably anywhere from, the little blue one's a bit shorter. He's probably about 5 inches, and I think when they're all built, they're maybe between 6 and 7 inches tall, the big heavy hitters. But then each faction also has 3 small vehicles. Like one's a repair vehicle, one's a combat vehicle, and the other one is I think a scout vehicle. And each of their vehicles for each faction, they're not pre-painted if you buy the game, but they're what do you call it? They're just in the same color plastic as like that faction. So if it's the orange faction, then you're going to be orange, and you could paint them if you want, but you don't have to. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting. But I don't know what the exact scale is exactly. Raflez says, hey, Adam, I've been watching you for a few weeks now. Got me back into 40K. Keep up the great content. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. What else have we got? Quick question. Have you ever tried priming with gesso and acrylic paint mix? I have not. Like I said before, I've primed with gesso, but I've never tried to mix it with acrylic paint. That's interesting. I mean, from what I understand, modern gesso has got some acrylic in it anyway. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that would do. That's would be something to try out, I'm sure. Let's see, what else have we got? Heavy Gear was very Votom-like. I've heard of Votom. Yep, you're right, it was. That was the thing about Heavy Gear 2. It was a little, it was a bit anime, Votom. That is a word I remember, and I remember it's something about vertical tanks. No, I don't know what it's, but yeah, I've seen that art style, and it is very like that. One faction had very rounded edges to everything, and the other one was much square and blockier. If I remember, there was like the North and the South, or something like that. I had a friend who used to play Heavy Gear quite a bit, and I used to play the video game, the first or the second one on the PC years and years ago, and it was kind of fun. Actually, I liked it. Let's see here. Armor is going to plastic ceramics, so chipping would be different. That's also a good point, Dennis. These guys may not be particularly metal. Obviously, they may be like some sort of ceramic or ceramasteel or who knows what. So yeah, that's a good point as well. I've got to figure out how I want to weather them properly. I'm going to definitely use washes and things like that, but I also want to figure out what else I'm going to do to kind of get through that. But yeah, that is interesting. That's an interesting point. Jez says, "Ooh, I caught a live stream. Excellent. Cheers for the good work and advice and entertainment." Well, thank you, Jez. I appreciate that you guys come and watch the show. What else have we got? Granberg says, thought about backing Rising Sun, but using the models for Song of Blades and Heroes. Well, that'd be kind of cool. I know that Rising Sun thing from Cool Mini blew up. Like, it just about took down Kickstarter when it first launched. I guess it was a really big deal. I don't know anything really about it other than the fact that it sold really well on Kickstarter. I don't really know much about it though, but I know that people were really, really interested in it. So that would be kind of cool to do like a very kind of, Asian themed kind of fantasy Song of Blades and Heroes thing. That'd be a lot of fun. Song of Blades and Heroes is a great system. So yeah, whatever kind of sculpts that you want to do, you can do with that game. Or a variation of it, because they not only Song of Blades and Heroes, though fantasy, they also have Fear and Faith, which is like zombies and werewolves and vampire hunters. They have what else do they have? They have Song of Drums and Shakos, which is Napoleonic. There's a bunch of different versions of that game, which is really interesting. Dark Age makes cool miniatures for Inquisitor warbands. Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. If you wanted to, yeah, honestly, that's a good point. There's a lot of models in the Dark Age line. The Dark Age models are pretty cool. I like them a lot. And there's a bunch of them that would work really well if you wanted to play an Inquisitorial warband, because a lot of the Inquisitorial models are really hard to find these days. You got to go onto eBay to find them. When the Inquisitor kind of supplemental codex first came out, I was thinking about making an Inquisitorial warband back when I still played 40K a lot, like full-size 40K, not just Kill Team. And so I started going on eBay and buying Inquisitorial models because I really wanted to do that and build this kind of cool like warband. And yeah, that was difficult, man. You got to find. I was searching all over, but you can't buy most of it from Games Workshop anymore. So if you can't find it on eBay either, then Dark Age would be a good place to go for a lot of that stuff. That's a very good point. Jerry says that GKR, Giant Killer Robots, looks closer to 2mm, judging by the buildings in the pictures. That's very possible. I could see that. Jeremy says, have you ever gotten into a game that was already dead, no longer supported or made by the time you discovered it? Huh, that's a good question. It seems like something I would do. Have I done that, though? I don't know. I don't think so. Oh, well. I got into AT-43. Well, it wasn't dead yet. It was still going, but it died pretty quickly after I got into it. AT-43 was made by a French company called Rackham, I believe. And it was a sci-fi game, and they were pre-painted models. But they were good pre-painted models. They weren't like HeroClix quality. They were much nicer than that. And like if you think about like how good the paint quality on X-Wing is, that's how good these figures were, in my opinion. They were really well done. And I think that's part of the reason why they went out of business, because doing that really well is expensive and time-consuming. And yeah, but it was a cool game system. But like I said, I got in it just towards the end, and then bought a bunch of stuff and was playing it. And then they started going out of business, so then everything was on sale. So I started buying even more of it, and then all of a sudden, now it's just yeah. But if I really wanted to sit down and still play it, I still got the stuff. I could play it. Instead, what I've done is I've very frequently taken those models and used them in other games, which is another, that's the thing that's cool about miniatures games. Like, there are video games out there that you can't play anymore because the servers that used to run them, if it's a multiplayer thing or an MMO, are gone. So you bought this game, you may still have the CD or the DVD or whatever, and you could install it on your machine, but a lot of times you can't play it anymore. Not every time, but a lot of times you can't play it anymore. Maybe you can play the single player, but you can't play the multiplayer because they got rid of the servers. I could play a game from 40, 50 years ago if I've got the rules and the models. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter. So that's one of the benefits in my mind. Have you ever played the Dawn of War games? If so, will you be getting new Dawn of War 3? I played Dawn of War 1 quite a bit. I used to play a lot more video games back then. I played Dawn of War 2 a little bit. I didn't like it as much. Like I thought I would, because I'm like, oh, this is cool, skirmish, and yeah. And I don't know why, I just didn't like it as much. Dawn of War 3 looks like they're heading back more towards the Dawn of War 1 model, at least from the gameplay stuff that I've seen. And it looks amazing. I just don't really play much in the way of PC games anymore. Like I don't know. I was going to say if they came out with it for the PlayStation 4, I'd probably play it, except that it's really hard to do a decent RTS, on a console. So yeah, I don't see myself necessarily getting it, but maybe. I don't know. I'd probably have to upgrade my machine a little bit. I don't think my video card it's certainly not high end. It's good enough for video editing. but it's maybe I think I have a GTX 750 Ti. I think that number sounds right. So yeah. Gaming Trolls says, how about adding sponsor stickers like NASCAR to the robots? A big portion of that game, from what I can tell, is about sponsorship. So that's part of the deal. Like, technically, each of those robots is actually just owned by a corporation. So the four factions in that game are actually four separate megacorps. And they've got kind of really interesting names. There's like Thunderwolf Industries and Hammerstrike AG and Happy something, or it's kind of it. There's a pharmaceuticals company as one of them. There's a lot of satire going on in the game too, which I enjoy. So yeah, definitely. Anthony asks, have you seen the coming Perry Brothers Battle in a Box? 2-foot square terrain boards with plug-in buildings and 2 8mm plastic Napoleonic armies. No, I haven't. That's kind of interesting. It's interesting to because in the grand scheme of things right now in miniatures, historicals are not as popular as they used to be. It's more sci-fi and fantasy stuff. So for them to go and to do this in plastics and everything, that's really interesting. I'll have to take a look into it. I haven't looked at the Perry Brothers website or anything like that in quite some time, so I'll have to take a look and find out about that. That's kind of interesting. So yeah. Let's see here. Your content got me back into wargaming in general. Thank you for the inspiration and advice. Well, thank you, Lancelot Ducat. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you got back in. Matt Thomas says, I got into Night Model's Marvel Miniatures game, and then they lost the license. Yeah, that's one that just recently kind of happened, where a bunch of people started buying the Marvel models for that, and then all of a sudden now they don't have the license anymore. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer. I know that they're still going forward with the DC version, but yeah, that's a bummer. I mean, admittedly, still, like I said, you've still got the rules, you've still got the models you've got, so you could do that. But if you want to expand, you're going to be looking at eBay, and the rules aren't going to get updated anymore, probably. So there's that kind of problem, too. I definitely see that. Let's see here. Dennis says, I'm using one Rackham Mini as an Inquisitor henchman. Yeah, Rackham did some really cool stuff. Beyond AT-43, which was their sci-fi game, they also had a game called Confrontation. And they had two versions of Confrontation. There was the original version of Confrontation, which was all, you had to paint the models. They were, metal. But they were amazing sculpts. And a lot of painters really love those models. And they're hard to find. And then they did a pre-painted version, which is basically a fantasy version of AT-43, which was also called Confrontation, but had a different subtitle. And those were, people didn't like those as nearly as much as the AT-43 guys. And the painters didn't like them at all because they weren't nearly as good as the original Confrontation models. So that was probably another reason why they may have gone out of business. But yeah, if you can still find the old Confrontation models, the old metal ones, those are highly prized by a lot of painters because they're just amazing sculpts. Really, really super cool stuff. Let's see here. When companies like Privateer Press use Kickstarter, it pisses me off because they are using it in a way to avoid classic business risks and passing it to the buyers. There are some bigger companies that are using Kickstarter, and sometimes it's a little surprising. I understand why they do it, but yeah, basically they're just, there's companies that could afford to just make a new product, but instead they're going to do it up front, and they get paid up front, which is great for them. I mean, they lose some percentage because Kickstarter takes a percentage and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that for us as consumers, it's not terrible if we're interested in that stuff. I think it's a real problem for stores, because if you're sort of big company A and you come out with a product that you put in Kickstarter and people buy it and they get a whole bunch of extra, add-on stretch goals and all that jazz, they're sometimes very less likely to buy it in the stores later on. If you're a small company and you're using this product, that's exactly what it was designed for. Kickstarter was exactly designed for small companies to be able to produce things up front, by getting people to pay for it up front and then produce it and go through all that stuff. And obviously there have been horror stories of companies that don't come through, but there are also plenty of companies that have been able to come through, do good work, crank stuff out. And, there are companies that probably started out in Kickstarter and now don't need to use it anymore, and they don't. And there's other ones that started out in Kickstarter because they needed to and still do it now that they don't. I like the guys from Mantic a lot. I'm sometimes a little surprised by why they still keep using Kickstarter. Cool Mini or not, another good example. Both of those. It's, I understand why they're doing it, because another big deal is that it becomes a marketing tool. When you can say, oh, our new Kickstarter, we, got our we finished our goal in 5 hours, or whatever, that kind of stuff. That's great, and you can do, some press releases about it and stuff like that. I get that. I guess people got to vote with their dollars. That's just always the answer. If you don't like some big company that has plenty of money deciding that they want to do another Kickstarter, because you understand that maybe it's not great for stores, well, okay. But if it's a company who's their first game, or they're a small company, if I was starting a company, like a gaming company, even though I've got people like you to talk to, and that's a built-in audience to some degree, I would probably still have to do a Kickstarter if I was going to do that, because I just don't have the money to produce the things I might need to produce in that situation. But by the way, I'm not planning on doing a Kickstarter anytime soon, but I'm just saying it's great, and it's exactly designed for stuff like, well, even for Weta Workshop. They've never done one of these types of games before, so they've got money, I'm assuming, but they also want to see, sometimes when this is the first thing they've ever done, they want to see what the response is. So that's really cool. Stuff like, companies like, Wreckage, Hyacinth Games, Matt, they both have day jobs. They do this, and they want to be able to put these things out. Exactly. Kickstarter is exactly designed for small independent companies to be able to produce the things that they need to do, and get an exact idea of how many people are interested in it. So it's a great thing. I think that some companies are misusing it. That's just my own personal opinion. Again, if you don't like it, you just don't do the Kickstarter. You got to vote with your dollars on that situation. It's just the way it works. So let's see here. What else have we got? I've missed everything, says Will of the Way. What's Giant Killer Robots? It sounds like something I'm going to want to spend $1,000 on. Well, I don't think that there's $1,000 that you can spend on it. It's, like I was just talking about, it's a Kickstarter from Weta Workshop, the company that does the special effects for Lord of the Rings and a bunch of other movies. They've decided to make a gateway game. It's a board game / miniatures game, sort of. And the robots are, like, there's 4 factions, and there's a big robot in each faction. They will be pre-painted models. But if you want, in the Kickstarter, which is running now, there's a level you can go where you'll get the pre-painted models that come in the normal core box, plus you'll get unpainted, unassembled versions of the big models that you can then paint and go from there. And that's why I was showing this earlier, which is Weta sent me these so I can paint one up and show it to you guys next week in a video. And they're kind of crazy resin, and there's lots and lots and lots of little parts, which I'm going to have to figure out how to put together. But that's kind of the thing that's going on currently. This is a refrigerator magnet they sent me. I don't know why, but it was in the box. It's nice. So yeah, that's, whoops, I just hit my microphone, sorry. So yeah, that's what Giant Killer Robots is. If you're interested, go take a look at the Kickstarter. Just looks like Matt made a link, so awesome. But yeah, that's it's kind of a neat little thing. There are other companies out there, other channels. Mini Wargaming has a nice kind of play example of the game, and I think Beasts of War does as well. So go check those out. That's actually what got me interested, that and the art style. So that's why I contacted them. Let's see here. Diaz52 says AT-43 was their fatal mistake. I'm assuming you're talking about Rackham. Yeah, it was the beginning of the end from what I understood for that company, which is a bummer because it was a cool game and the models looked amazing. But when you get pre-paints to that quality, it's very difficult to do that at scale from what I understand. It took, those of you that play X-Wing might remember a couple of years ago when it would be very difficult if you would be like, oh, I would like to buy a Millennium Falcon. Well, we don't have any anywhere ever in stock because we can only paint them so quickly or whatever. Or, you couldn't get TIE fighters for like 3 months, that kind of stuff. Fantasy Flight has finally figured out how to fix that problem, it seems. So maybe we will start to see more of that down the road from other companies. But for quite a while, they were victims of their own success. They were like, we can't keep these things painted in stock. And that's why a lot of companies just don't do pre-paints because it's a ton of work. Or they do them really kind of terribly, like HeroClix. So, yeah, there's that too. But Jack Rowley says, shout out to Matt Sears. Mods make the internet go round. That is very true. Matt is he's a good guy. I don't know, Jack, why he sent you 3 eggplants as little icons there, but I think that means good things from Matt. Pretty sure. Jez asks, do you think we are in a new golden age of tabletop/wargaming/board games? It seems to have reached a popularity that had slipped for a few years. What do you think has caused this? I think that being a nerd, like I am, and like many of you probably are as well, is much less stigmatized than it used to be. The movies that make the big money at the box office these days are predominantly comic book movies. The TV shows that win the Emmys and get all the views are things like Big Bang Theory and stuff like that, where admittedly in Big Bang Theory, which I'm not a super big fan of or anything, they're sort of laughing at nerds. They're not, it's kind of a laughing with, but sort of a laughing at. That all being said, I have a friend who owns a comic shop here in town, and he says that nearly every day someone walks into his comic shop and looks around and is like, wow, I've never been in a comic shop before, but I watch Big Bang Theory, so I kind of figured I should go check one out. So a mixture of all of those things. Tabletop on YouTube with Will Wheaton having, B and admittedly C-list celebrities playing board games and showing stuff off. Every time that Tabletop has an episode and they show off a board game, you can't get that board game anymore because it sells out. So all that stuff, I think, in conjunction has made, rising tides raise all ships. So all that kind of cool nerd stuff that people like, I mean, the return of Star Wars to the movie theaters and all these different sort of formats and all that stuff brings all the kind of nerd stuff back up a little bit. So, granted, here in wargaming, where we're a sub-niche of a niche, we still see more people that are like, oh, this is really cool, I like that. X-Wing is huge for the wargaming crowd. It's a great gateway game because it's a good game, it's pre-paints, and it's Star Wars. So, that's the thing. And the thing is that people who sit down and play Star Wars for quite some time, maybe after a year of playing Star Wars, are like, I've got a friend right now who played X-Wing quite a bit and then got into Armada, and he liked that. And then he bought Imperial Assault, and then Imperial Assault's not painted. And so he was like, well, gosh, that's kind of I should probably learn how to paint these guys. And now I play Age of Sigmar with him, and he's got an entire Sylvaneth army, and he's doing good work. And he's playing Wreck Age as well, So, I think that's what's really causing this sort of golden age. Are we in a golden age? I would say to some degree, yes. I think it really helps that we've got the crowdfunding capabilities with the internet that we do. 10, 15 years ago, if you wanted to make a game, you had to get a rich uncle or do, something, get investors, go all that stuff and try to do that. And there was a lot of people that just couldn't produce stuff. Now, with a mixture of inexpensive prototyping, inexpensive manufacturing, even in some situations, and then also Kickstarter, there's a lot of it's a lot easier to produce games than it used to be to some degree. There's still a much higher bar because now lots of people can do it. So you have to be, if you want to get the eyeballs, you have to have really good, visuals. You have to have like board games that have lots and lots of cool parts in them have a tendency to sell really well, because people love all that kind of open up the box. There's how many unboxing videos do you watch out there on the internet? People are like, oh my God, look at all the parts in this box. This is super cool. It's the same kind of thing. So yeah, I think that we are in a golden age to some degree, and I'm pretty glad for it, frankly, because it's a hobby that I love. So I'm glad that more people are getting into it, and I think we just need to be inclusive and understand that we don't want to be those people who are like, oh, well, you're new to this, so you're not a real wargamer. Don't do that. Just if someone's like interested, bring them in and say, hey, check this out. This is really cool. This is how I did this. This is how I painted that. This is how this game works. Do that. Get more people into it. A big reason that I do this channel is because I want more people in the hobby. And admittedly, it's not completely altruistic. The more people that are in the hobby, the more people I have to play with, the more people I have to talk to about it. You know what I mean? I've had jobs before where I couldn't talk to anybody that I work with about the stuff that I do. Not that I was like, scared of talking to them about it. Not that I was ashamed. It was just, there was no frame of reference. It was like when they would talk to me about football, I'd be like, I know that football exists. That's about it. I don't know much about any of it. It's just, okay. me sitting there telling them about Age of Sigmar or 40K or Bolt Action, they'd be like, I got no idea what you're talking about, And so that's a thing. My current job, I can talk about tabletop gaming, and pretty much it's a small company. There's only 6 of us, but we're all tabletop gamers. So we all are like, oh yeah, cool, neat, and we share stuff, and that's great. Yeah, it just works out really well. So let's see here. What else have we got? Rafles says, would you ever do bat reps on your channel? Well, that's a good point, Rafles. I don't personally really watch a ton of bat reps. I watch some once in a great while, but I don't watch a lot of them. I want to do some eventually. They're going to take some work. I have this thing called Patreon, which for those of you that aren't familiar, Patreon's kind of like Kickstarter, except instead of like I'm making a product, a game, an album, whatever, a toy, a device, and then raising money to be able to produce that thing, it's more of a creator support sort of a thing. So I make videos, I make songs, I write stories, whatever you do, you can set it up so that people can support you and pay like $1, $2, $3, $4, whatever per month. And then, so anyway, I have a Patreon. Long story short, patreon.com/tabletop minions. If you go look for it, they want you to set up goals. So one of my goals is that if I hit $750 a month, I think, then I'm going to be able to start doing bat reps. The thing I hate about most bat reps is the sound is terrible. Like you can hear the guy holding the camera, but you can't hear anybody else. So I need to do some lighting changes. I need to get a microphone that's omnidirectional so that I can put it and kind of hang it down from the middle of the board out of the camera, but then you'll be able to hear both opponents. And there's a lot of different, and it's just a whole thing. So it's probably, well, I don't know if it's coming or not. Like right now, my Patreon is just right around $600. So it's pretty close to the goal, but it's not, it's still $150 off, which is awesome. And I appreciate every single Patreon. I've been posting stuff on Patreon, and it's great. Bat reps are not my favorite thing, frankly. So I will do them because I do get people who ask. If I hit that goal, I'll do them because I get people that ask about them. And if people are giving to the Patreon, I'm assuming that's one of the things they want to go towards. But yeah, it's not something that brought me to YouTube. There are plenty of people out there who are doing bat reps because that's the thing that they love about YouTube, and that's awesome. But it's not my thing particularly right now. So we'll see how it goes. Jim Worthington says, how are the mold lines on those parts? Like I said before, there's basically none. Whoops, that's not the button. That's the button. Yeah, and you can't really see because it's overexposed and blown out. But I'm literally unable to find any. So I don't know what the heck the process is. I don't know how they got these things here, but yeah, there's just nothing in the way of mold lines on these things. Like I said, it's a very odd material. It's not super high. Like these little rivets that you can barely see there on the gun, it's not super high detail, but these are designed eventually to be done on just regular plastic, I think. And like I said, it's a very strange, this is the base. It's an odd resin that I'm not used to. It is not bendy at all. Like Forge World resin is sometimes a bit bendy, and Finecast is super bendy. This stuff, there's no flex to it, so it's very interesting. But yeah, so like I said, I need to find out from my contact at Weta whether this is the same material that the Painter's Edition Kickstarter people will get, or if this is like a prototype version, or I'm not sure yet, but I need to find that out. Did someone say Sylvaneth? Yes, Lorax, someone did. A friend of mine plays Sylvaneth and has a nicely painted army, and he's relatively new to tabletop gaming, but he's really gone gangbusters and cranked out some really nice stuff. Let's see here. Imperial Assault is what got me into the hobby. First X-Wing, then Imperial Assault, now Malifaux. Yeah, that's basically what happened to my friend. He started out with X-Wing, and then I think Armada, and then Imperial Assault, or maybe it was Imperial Assault and then Armada, and then now, Wreckage and Age of Sigmar. Do you think gaming companies, Games Workshop, etc., do you think their secrecy hurts them? Secrecy meaning products, updates, facts? I don't know, frankly. I have been to events before. So a friend of mine owns a game shop here in town, and one of his distributors game store owners generally get their stuff from distributors. Sometimes they work directly with the manufacturer, but a lot of times they get them from a distributor who gets them from the manufacturer. And then, so one of the distributors is a company called ACD, and they're based out of Madison, Wisconsin. And they have an event every spring where the retailers, the store owners, get to come down. You pay, I think it's $25 a head, and then you're down there for 2 days, and you get fed and all that stuff. You have to get your own hotel room. But you go to seminars from the manufacturers, and then there's free lunch and free dinner and all that jazz. So I've gone with him a couple of times because I'm sort of his ad hoc marketing guy, and he doesn't want to hang out there by himself. So he's taken me down there, and I've talked to different companies and things like that, and it's cool. When you go to some of these seminars, it's interesting, and it's different than last time. You used to go to Games Workshop seminars, and they would be like, okay, well, we're going to teach you how you can sell more Space Marines. And then you're like, yeah, but what about this? And they don't answer that question. Well, what about this? And they don't answer that question. That was the old Games Workshop. And then you would go to a seminar from, say, like Privateer Press, and then they would tell you about everything they're doing for the next 18 months. And then you'd go to a seminar for Wizards of the Coast, and they'd tell you about every last thing they were dumping out in the next 18 months. And Games Workshop wouldn't do that. Now, they've changed. The last time that we went last year, we got there, and instead of them just trying to sell us another, a PowerPoint, instead they said, we need to know what questions you guys have because we're going to write them down and take them back to corporate, basically. And so people were just saying, this is what we want. This is what we're asking about. This is what we want to know more about. What can Games Workshop do for you was the question these guys were asking, which was a total 180, and it was interesting. So to kind of get back to the secrecy thing, I'm not sure why the secrecy thing is the way it is. There was a lot of people talking about how, well, Games Workshop had to do the secrecy thing because of their contract with New Line Cinema over all the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit stuff. I don't know if that's true or not. And they have backed off on it to some degree. Like, they started telling us about Blood Bowl way before it came out. It used to be, for those of you who are real new, for years and years and years, Games Workshop would not speak a word about a new product until 1 week before it came out. And then they'd be like, oh, by the way, hey, look at this thing. And everybody would have seen the leaks already and stuff, and like, yeah, we knew that was coming. But they wouldn't even acknowledge a product until 1 week before it was about to ship. So they still do that to some degree, but they've started to change things. They started to I don't know. I'm wondering if they think that the secrecy acts as kind of a marketing trick, where people are like, well, it's so secret, and then they start to see some leaks, and then they talk about it, and I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it's a bad idea. I think people lock up when they're like, well, I don't know what's coming out, and I don't know when it's coming out, so I'm not going to buy anything because I don't want to buy this and then find out that, I don't know. On the other hand, with like 8th edition, if you told people, hey, 8th edition's coming out in the fall, a lot of people would be like, cool, I'm not going to buy anything until it comes out. Well, that's kind of a problem. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. Moderator Matt has a pro tip. Plug in your laptop before live chat. Yeah, I could see that. It seems like a good idea. General Lux, there is a perk to only hearing the person holding the camera, which is that you get one voice explaining what's happening and developing a narrative rather than several talking at once, referring to bat reps. Yeah, I can see that to some degree. I get annoyed when, like, yeah, if you're playing with two people and you ask the second person a question and you're the camera person and then they answer it and then the people who are watching the video can't hear it, that's the thing I don't like. I understand if they're both talking over each other, that's no fun for the viewer / listener. I get that. But yeah, I don't know. I like to have, personally, the ones that I like to watch, the bat reps that I like to watch are the ones that have more personality, because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I am not a strategic player. If I do eventually start making bat reps, you will not go to these bat reps to find out the best way to play 40K or Wreckage or Malifaux or Giant Killer Robots. You will hopefully come because I'll be showing you how the game works to some degree, and you'll be enjoying listening to me and whoever I'm with and hanging up. But I'm not going to be teaching you tactics because I don't know any, frankly. So yeah, there's plenty of other channels out there that do that kind of stuff, and that's great. They do good work. I just, so it'll be more of a personality banter bat rep, if anything, on my channel, which I think some people also just don't like, and that's fine. That's their choice. But that's kind of where it's going to go. Jack says, I love your content, Adam. Didn't know you had a Patreon. I hope my $1 a month helps. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been working out really well. It's allowing me, the Patreon has been working out really well, and it's allowing me to be able to get, like, I'm going to be buying some new equipment soon. I did just actually buy a laptop, which I'm going to be using for when I go to, like, Adepticon, to be able to dump stuff onto it. Like when I'm shooting all during the day, I want to be able to get things onto an external hard drive. Well, you can't just go from the, SD card in the camera direct to the internal. So you need that. It's a decent laptop, so it will also I should be able to do editing on it. I'm looking forward to that. So that's one thing. Again, it's going to help cover hotel fees and things like that when I do go to conventions and stuff. So I really do appreciate it. It's allowing me to be able to expand the channel. I'm going to be doing my own gaming convention expo thing, which I've talked about. Right after Adepticon, I'm going to announce it fully and have all the information on the website. But right now, if you go to tabletopminions.org/TMX, you'll find out at least a little bit about it, the date and the location. But the Patreon thing is helping along with that too. And I'm going to be doing that once a year. So I'm looking forward to kind of going that direction and doing those sort of things. So every little bit helps, and I appreciate it. Let me see, where are we at? We got about 5 minutes left. What's going on in the chat? Malev says, I still go to the New Zealand version of Games Workshop's website every Friday night to check for new releases. It's an old habit. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Getting back to that secrecy thing is that Games Workshop's website, like, you need to find out. Like, if you want to go out and look at the rumor sites and dig through all that stuff, you can find out frequently what's coming in advance to some degree, or you just go to the website and go look at it and go, oh yeah, that's how it. Oh, okay, that's great. It depends. If they would give you a little bit more leeway, I think it would, at time-wise, that would be nice too. But it's their choice. Like I said, they are changing things. They told people about Silver Tower long before it came out. They told people about Blood Bowl. They showed it off at Warhammer World long before it came out, and they were showing off models, which they never used to do for years and years and years. They were not showing you anything until literally a week before you could buy it in stores, and they're changing, here and there, which is nice. Let me see. How do you handle your cats when you try to paint or play a game at home? My furballs seem to be extremely interested in wargaming, and they want to see everything up close. That's very true. I do that by keeping them out of the basement. So it's a downside. Like, there will be times it would be lovely to be sitting downstairs listening to music or a podcast or whatever, painting, and have a cat like on a thing, like right over here, just sort of lounging and like watching me and whatever. That's a lot of fun. That's great. The problem is when they end up on the gaming table with you or end up on the painting table with you. Years ago, we lived in a different place, this apartment, and I had my computer table like here, and then I had my painting table here, so I could sit in the middle, and if I just did a 180, I could go from one to the other. So I was sitting at the computer, and I was doing something, and it was whatever, all that stuff, and I just heard just the quietest little noise behind me, like the sound of a paintbrush in a mug, just tapping a little bit or moving a little bit. Just, it was the quietest little noise, and I was like reading something on the web, and I'm like, something moved behind me. And I turned 180 degrees and I looked, and our cat, who is now passed away, Sapphire, was standing on my completely messy, terrible, terrible hobby table. And she was standing amongst all of the brushes and pots and this and that and stuff like that, just in the middle of the table for no reason. And her tail had just tapped a brush, which just made a tiny little noise. I don't know how she got there. So I had to try to extract her. So I had to stand up and grab her by the middle and sort of pull her straight up to get her out of the way. And it was... So how I do it is by basically keeping the cats out of the basement. Now, there's a downside to keeping the cats out of the basement in that I think that there's a mouse down there. But on the other hand, I'll get a trap, I guess, is what's going to go on. So, if you don't have the ability to keep your stuff separate from the cats, then I'm not a good source on how to tell you to keep it so that the cats stay away from that stuff. I know some people like to use a little spray bottle, a little spritz spray bottle when they go someplace. If you don't want them on the counter, you spritz them and then they run off unless they like it. I guess, I don't know. Our big cat doesn't seem to mind being spritzed, so that doesn't work for us. But yeah, that's kind of where it's at. Let's see, where else are we at? We're just about done here. Talking about World's End Publishing and some other post-apocalyptic games, which are a lot of fun. Joey and I are friends. There aren't going to be any PA skirmish stabbings at Adepticon. Well, that's good. I don't want to see anybody get stabbed at Adepticon. So, yeah. If you're going to be at Adepticon, you should definitely come by. Say hi to Matt. He's going to be doing demos of Wreck Age. I'll probably be hanging out there at some point. There's plenty of other companies out there that are making... I really like the fact that post-apocalyptic is becoming like a real genre within wargaming. I really dig that. Like, because you've got your sci-fi, you got your fantasy, you got your historicals, which runs a whole gamut by itself. But the fact that post-apocalyptic is really becoming a cool thing, then you're starting to see more and more PA stuff in wargaming, specifically skirmish wargaming. I really dig that. So, it's... If you're interested, the thing that's great about post-apocalyptic, in my mind, is that if you do want to build your own models, it's really easy and fun to kit bash stuff. If you want to kit bash something that looks really super sci-fi, it's kind of hard sometimes. But if you want to, like, everybody in post-apocalyptic movies is just like wearing stuff that they found. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I found this football helmet. I'm going to use that, and I have this this pea coat. And I've shoulder pads, why not, and I found this gun, which doesn't actually work, but it looks sort of cool, so it sometimes scares people away, and I got no shoes, that's post-apocalyptic pretty much in a nutshell. So totally, I love the fact that it's becoming a strong genre within the wargaming, and you're starting to see terrain that companies are selling that's just designed for post-apocalyptic, that kind of stuff. I did a video a while back about MDF buildings, and those were post-apocalyptic, like shantytown type buildings that work out great. From Death Ray Designs is the name of the company. They make great MDF stuff. Jack says, I prefer to see story-driven / fluffy bat wraps rather than competitive stuff. Yeah, same here, absolutely. Let's see here. What else have we got? I think that we're probably right about the end. It's a little after 11. Armor Freak says, a trick to keep cats from getting on surfaces, put double-sided sticky tape along the edge of the surface for a while. Yeah, we tried to do that with our big cat Diesel because we didn't want him to be clawing at... well, actually, he doesn't have front claws. When we got him from the shelter, he didn't have front claws, so we didn't do that. Somebody else did that. He was 1.5 when we got him. It was his sister that was clawing at the furniture, so we put some double-sided tape on the edge of the furniture, which is supposed to keep them away from it, and he would lick it. He's a weird dude. You know that bitter stuff that you spray on things so that they don't chew on, like, light, lamp cords and stuff like that? It's like bitter orange or bitter apple. He thinks that's a condiment. We would spray it on there when he was chewing on cables back when he was younger, and he would just go and lick it off. He's a weird cat, like literally. So with most cats, that's supposed to work, the double-sided tape stuff, from what I understand, but not so much with him. So, your mileage may vary. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody coming by and taking a look and seeing the crazy, slightly overexposed resin bits that I'm going to be very familiar with for the next week, trying to get this model finished up. And again, I want to thank Weta Workshop from New Zealand for sending these 2 models over, and I'm going to put them I'm going to put one of them together at least and paint them up. Giant Killer Robots, like I said, is still currently in Kickstarter and will be until, I want to say, the 27th. I think it's like right after we get back from Adepticon. I could be wrong on that. Maybe it's sooner, but it's in progress, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing that you'd be interested in. So go check it out if you want to, and I'll see you guys in another 2 weeks. Like I said, we'll have to figure out how it's going to work because I'll be at Adepticon on that Sunday morning, 2 weeks from now. So I might be doing a live report from the hotel room. I might be crazy hungover, or I might be doing it Sunday night. We'll see how it goes. But I do want to make sure I get it done on Sunday, frankly. So I'll let you guys know how that works out. I hope you guys have a good fortnight, and we will... free shots of Malort if you find me at Adepticon. I hope I don't find you. I mean, you seem like a nice guy, Aaron Thomas, for giving out free shots, but Malort is not. That's not tasty. I don't like that. Maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, yeah. So you're going to start seeing reports from Adepticon in a couple soon, and the Giant Killer Robots video is going to be coming out on Friday, and tomorrow, Monday, is going to be a short video about Valhalla. So you're going to be seeing a lot from me in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks at the next live show, and thanks for watching.